But even as we start, I just wanted to pose a question to all the participants. Like, if today you are given that you have 5 minutes to live, if today you are told you have 5 minutes to live, what are some of the very urgent decisions you'd like to take before the 5 minutes elapse? And I want us to reflect on this question even as we go on with the session, because what we'll still be asking again is these decisions that you'll be rushing to do in the next 5 minutes. What is blocking you from making those decisions before the 5 minutes come? And so to our next slide, these are some of the images that I got from participants as a representation of death. I even tried to do a survey on the internet to see how do different cultures represent death diagrammatically. And actually, I really struggled to get any positive picture. So as you look at the screen, that's how many people view death. And yet today, this is the thing I'm telling you, prepare for it. And so the question would be, how can I prepare for this monster that I'm seeing here? And I'm hoping by the end of the discussion today, maybe we will, when we are told to draw death, maybe we will start drawing angels or some things like that. And my concern was, again, when people are going through different stages of life, like when a couple is expecting a baby, they start preparing early, they go to clinic, they even start buying things earlier. When the birthday for this baby comes, the baby is in the birthday celebrating together. When people reach a time and they want to get married, they even form committees. It's something the person is involved in. But then what was baffling me is when people are preparing, like when people are expecting their death to come, nobody prepares. People are not involved in the preparation of their death. It is actually other people who sit down and start making major decisions that the owner of this death needs to have participated in. And when I look at the introduction, I was just pointing out that when even among psychologists, the people I've interacted with, people find it very, very difficult to discuss death. But I know quite a number of grief counselors who can really handle the topic of death well. But then you see that is the death of someone else. But what I'm finding missing is now when it comes to my own death, someone talking about or planning about their own death, it becomes a serious problem. People are not really like open to talk about this. But yet, when I look at the World Palliative Care Association, it's a very large organization dealing with people who are having terminal illnesses in the final stages of life. They say quality death is a human right. So you can see if you do not die a death that is quality, then it's a violation of human rights. And then I was looking at, like, how do they define quality dying? And they are saying quality dying can only be achieved when the preferences of someone about their own death are met. The preferences of death are met. But then when I look at like the population I was working with in my research, and even the general population, we are talking of people having preferences about death, and those preferences being met so that it becomes quality death. But then most of us do not even have any preference. There is no preference. In one meeting, I talked to a group of people and I was talking about death, and one person told me it doesn't bother him because when he will be dead, he will not be there. So it is about other people who will be. And when you go to even WHO definition of quality dying, then that's a very miserable death. If you can die and all the decisions about your death and your family, and they are being made by other people. I was also doing just a survey in the Holy Scriptures, and I came across this scripture that I felt we can reflect on. And This is about a king called Hezekiah, who was about to die. And so God sends prophet Isaiah to tell the Hezekiah that you are going to die. But I really selected a few words that the prophet was telling him, which are words that were coming from God. The prophet told him, the Lord tells you that the Lord tells you that you put everything in order because you will not recover. Get ready to die. And that's the question I posed when I started. How many of us who are listening today are ready for their death? And getting ready doesn't mean you are going to die tomorrow. How many can say, if something abruptly happens today and I'm not there, I will go wherever I'm going very well, very, very happy. And what I was speaking from, the reflection I'm seeing here is, like, even God himself doesn't want people to go to die and go there when they are not prepared. He was actually telling this man, go and put your house in order. The family was disorderly. So God was like, I want to kill you, but then I don't want you to come here and leave a family that is not put in order. And that justifies why should people prepare for their own death. And even as we move on, a question I still pose to you today: if death were to come, are you ready? And someone would ask, so what is the problem? Why are we talking about death preparedness? Is there a problem in the first place? And I would say yes, there is a big problem. I have just checked a few citations here. I was looking at the website of the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority of Kenya. And as per June, I think when the financial year was ending, they are saying the resources, the financial resources that they have collected that is unclaimed stands at 43 billion Kenya shillings as at the end of that financial year that we were ending in June. And maybe if I shed some light on this authority was formed by the government when they realized that people normally die, leave property, like say you had several bank accounts that you had not disclosed to anybody. When you die and none of your family members is going for that, the banks would hold on that. So the government said, we need to have an authority that will track all those assets whose owners cannot be traced, so that it can take them as a trustee. Then they try to look for who are the owners or who are the beneficiaries of these resources. So this authority, from the naming that we can see there, it is unclaimed financial assets. So it's not all assets, it's unclaimed financial assets. This is money in the banks. This is money in the insurance companies where people have taken policies. This is money in shares and unit trusts. But it's not talking about land. People don't surrender land to this authority. People don't surrender maybe businesses they had set up to this authority. So the figure that you are seeing here, it is for the people who are good-hearted, who have said, we have some money that does not belong to us, let us return to the government to look for the owners. These are very few people. So again, if you even stop there and focus on financial resources alone, I think there is a lot that is still being held by banks, by insurance companies, by even private citizens that belongs to other people that has not been surrendered. Then there could be a lot in terms of land, in terms of vehicles, in terms of other assets. And the question that we need to stop a bit and ask there then, so if this money is, or these resources are being held by organizations and nobody has claimed them, like people put money there and they are not claiming them. Suppose those people die, who will benefit from this money? And yet their families do not know, their friends do not know. Then that tells you this is money that would go just unaccounted for like that. And what that tells you, what I was asking is, does this person who has put money there and just disappeared, does he know that he can die? Some of these people possibly have died. Some of them possibly they are alive and they are not bothering. They are keeping a lot of secrets. The other aspect that I looked at was, I was looking at the judiciary report the annual report of the judiciary. The latest that I was able to access is the 2017-2018 report. And I was looking at cases related to intestate deaths. These are deaths where people die without leaving a will, without leaving any plan. And the report says of all the civil cases pending in the High Court, and I only singled out the High Court because we have cases in the magistrate courts, with cases in the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. Only in the High Court, the number of pending probate cases was 40, it made 40%, 40.5% of all the civil cases. And you see, these are cases that people are now going to the courts to say, my father died, he had not shown us how to distribute our wealth, so the court is supposed to come in to help us. These probate cases are actually an indication that very many people are dying without making the required plans. And so what this then leaves us, I was trying to see, do we have any program in Kenya that is concerned with the preparation of people for death? And the answer is yes. But then the programs that are there, they focus on palliative care. And that only caters for people who are terminally ill. But it is like assuming the general population who are not ill will not die. And yet the gap that we are supposed to see now is end of life planning should not be left for the terminally ill or for the old. Because when I again check the records of death in Kenya, there is no particular age where people are, it's the only age where people are dying. People are dying across all ages. And so there needs to be a plan, people to be involved in planning for their own death, so that then it can make them have quality death. And up to this point, back to our moderator, I would maybe want to engage with the participants a bit. If there is any comment, any question, the moderator, you can help us so that we can pick a few questions then before I move to the next presentation, the next slide.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stephen, for that. I really appreciate even the learning. I'm not seeing any comments. I think people are still processing whether they are ready for their death. If it was to occur today, that is it's a question we don't normally process. We don't think about it very intensively. So I think we are still getting into that. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. So if I'm hearing what my moderator is saying, that people are really deep in thoughts, then I am really happy, because today I really wanted to provoke us to think, and not to think about anybody else, to think about ourselves, not to think about what of if my wife dies, what of if my child dies, is what of if I die. So what I'm projecting, this is just a snapshot of a part of the findings of the study that I carried out on death preparedness and end of life planning in Nairobi. So when I carried out this study, I used a psychometric tool that measures death anxiety. I'd not go really deep into that because I want to reach everybody, including the non-psychologists. When I look at this tool, what I'm presenting, it shows you the negative death attitudes, the levels of death anxiety. And this tool was measuring these levels to a maximum of 7. You can see quite the population that is between 20 to 34 years, they were scoring very high. The fear of death and avoidance of death is very, very high in that population. They do not want even to talk about death. There is the fear of death where just people are scared about death, but there is avoidance where they are even making efforts that any discussion about death should not pick up. I reflected back when we were growing, such topics, they will tell you, no, when you talk about death, you are calling it, it will come. And then that was even dangerous to talk about it such a time that I'm talking about, just about in the night. Possibly you'd have to talk about death in the day, that was okay, than talking about it in the night like this, because they would say, you know, someone can die if you talk about this. So as you see, the population between 35 to 64, the fear and avoidance of death was still very high, but then it was now declining. But those who are above 65, there was some level of, like, the fear and avoidance of death was a bit low. But even when I look at the way I was scoring, they are still high because they were scoring more than average. of the tool that I was using, which means even among the older population, the fear is lower compared to the younger generations. But then when we pick them alone and assess them, even the fear of death is still very high. I also wanted to know the levels. How do people, what are the different levels of acceptance of death? And so I was looking at it on 3 continents. Neutral acceptance. These are people who just accept death because it's a stage in life. So they have no reason at all attached to accepting. They just know when you grow old, you die, or at some point of your life, you will die, even if you don't grow old. But then there are 2 other approaches that we used in measuring this level of death acceptance. And one of them was approach acceptance. These are people who accept death because it is giving them some rewards. And the people who really indicated they had high level of approach acceptance, they are people who believe in a supernatural power, and possibly I would say they are living according to their religion, according to what their religion teaches. So then they would say, for me, even if I die, I'm going to God. You see, they are approaching God, they are approaching death because it is coming with some reward. I'm going to heaven where there is gold, and that's the group of people that we are talking about here. But the other group, they accepted death, but the reason for accepting death is escape. These people said they have many problems on earth, so if they can die, it is even easier. You see them, they are running away from here, like, it's better I go because I'm having a lot of problems. And that would tell you maybe what motivates some people, like those who commit suicide. Why are they attracted to death? That's like kind of escape. And so you need just to check yourself. Where are you? If you are in that bracket where you are saying, I don't fear death, what is your reason for not fearing death? Is it because you are going to a better place, or you have many problems here? And then if it's that way, I would tell you, please don't die when you have many problems. Let's work on these problems, plan well so that you go without problems, because God even doesn't want you to go and leave problems, the way he told Hezekiah. And in the review of literature, I was trying to look at different parts in the world, and then also the population that I was working with. When we are preparing people for end of life, we are psychologists, some are non-psychologists. If I'm a psychologist and my client has come so that I can help him to prepare for end of life, what do I look for? But then today I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about me. How am I prepared for my end of life? And you, the listener today, how are you prepared for your end of life? And so the 4 major areas or themes emerged where people normally focus on, or these are the issues that disturb people. If you see someone who is dying and he has a lot of maybe fear, when you examine them, they would land on one of these areas. They will tell you their problem is associated with one of these areas that I'm projecting. And so, as professionals, it's good to know this, practice it on ourselves, and then say, could these be areas that maybe when I'm engaging someone who is in the journey of dying, and everybody, of course, is, including a child who was born today, what should I then focus on? So we have spiritual planning. Those are the things that I would say, if you want to prepare a good end of life plan, then you need to do a spiritual plan, an estate plan, work on self-disclosures, as we'll see, and then your own funeral. That's the most challenging part. People really didn't want to talk about their own funeral. So what is it that then needs to be looked at when we are looking at planning for your death from a spiritual perspective? And when we talk about spirituality, it's a contentious term and a very wide term, but we are just talking of how do people perceive to have fulfilled their life meanings. To some people, spirituality would be equated to religiosity. To some, their spirituality is about their religion. To some, it's not about their religion. So we'll put all those into perspective. In my study, I was even looking at the atheists, because they also have their own way of looking at things. Them, they don't believe if you die, you go anywhere. So I was really interested to see how do they conceptualize this topic of death. So I have also indicated I'm working on studies on near-death experiences. interviewing people who have gone through like a heart attack to a point that they were almost half dead. And so trying to see what happens, some of them reporting seeing very different things on the other side of the world. For now, I've not analyzed fully, but it's literature that's also available. People can read about that. When people are going through this, spirituality becomes a very vital area of their life and of that moment that they are dying. And that's why it's really a key thing, even us who are listening and me who is presenting, to be checking, so how is my spirituality? Am I okay with my spirituality? Because then that begins to be the first point of making a spiritual plan about my own death. And it's good to explore your own. You check your spirituality and ask yourself some hard questions. And the question I asked you when we were starting, if you were to be told you are going to die today in the next 5 minutes, so what areas of your spirituality would you change? When I asked this question at some other place, someone was telling me I would first of all rush to my pastor to repent and to be prayed for, so that I go when I'm okay. Then he tells you, at the moment I'm talking to this person, he's not really right with his own spirituality. That's why he's saying, in my 5 minutes, I would not even do anything. I would really need to sort things with God, because I think I'm not in the right spirituality. And so it becomes good to check with ourselves and our clients. Are there any spiritual issues pending that possibly they can work on as even they draw their end of life plan? Are there life regrets? Because we are talking of spirituality, also looking at fulfillment in life. Are there regrets that someone is living with that is saying, I wish I didn't do this? Or am I, even the one who is talking or you is listening, are you also living with some regrets? Those are the things that you can then decide and say, in my death preparation plan, I will work on the regrets. I want to either see a therapist or work with it myself. If I have major mistakes that I've committed in life, those are areas to want to work on, so that you restore and then you streamline your spirituality. Some people, when they are on the deathbed, they are really wishing, I wish I corrected, I wish I made peace with so and so, and so when we are doing this spiritual planning, instead of waiting to reach the deathbed and start saying, I wish, you are just giving yourself an opportunity and saying, instead of reaching the end and saying, I wish, let me do it now. Let me be a constant peace maker, like trying to make peace with those who are differing with me, trying to work on my own regrets, so that life doesn't continue. Then you want to pick the end of life planning to be an event just when you are lying on your deathbed. So generally, that's what you would want to look at in terms of your spirituality. And if we come to our country, I said to some people, spirituality is linked to religiosity. You see people like every Sunday going to church. Every time people are going, praying, making their ways with God, if they believe in God, that's a process. Someone is saying, I would rather be ready. And that's what the preachers always tell us, be ready, because you don't know the hour. That's all about spiritual planning. The next part that I would really want to spend time on is estate planning. And when we are talking about estate, we are talking about what have you accumulated? What property have you accumulated in your life up to where you are? And someone used to tell me, I don't need to do an estate plan because I don't have land, I don't have what. And then I was asking the person, do you have clothes? When you die, who do you want to take your clothes? Why can't you start with clothes before we go to the land, before we go to the money in the bank account? At least up to this point, there are some things that you own. Do you know who will take those things when you are not there? Some of us who are married, we've had cases where people die. The next day, other people march in the house and pick everything that belonged there, and they leave the wife like that. So they are saying, you are not part of us. These were our brother's things. And then I was asking, what of if this brother had already organized things? And so some of the things that I would really say we need to look at in the estate planning is, you start where you are. You don't wait to be rich to do a plan. If you have one biro pen and a book, please go and write somewhere, in case I die, this biro pen should go to so and so. or this is what I want, it should be donated somewhere. When you keep adding your wealth, then you go on making that. So you don't wait when you are rich. The other area that I really wanted to focus on, estate planning. When is the last time you updated your next of kin lists? At the places where you work, with your bank accounts, when did you last update that? One time I spoke to someone who was struggling because their father had an insurance policy. The father died. This insurance policy came in force, but then they realized the person who had been on that policy was the father's brother. And it was not intentional. When he was taking the insurance, he was not married. So after several years, they even differed with that brother, and the family was not living peaceful with the brother, but the man was living well with the wife. So when he dies, 1 million shillings is supposed to be paid. But then the wife goes and the insurance tells her, we don't know you. This is the person who is here. And now this person who was talking to me is seeing someone else taking the father's property, misusing it, and even mistreating them. So we would really need to ask even at ourselves at this time, when was the last time you updated your next of kin lists? And so it is good, maybe after this talk tomorrow, we can visit our banks and just try to check who is on the account as the next of kin. So who do you want to be on that person? So it's not bad to update. Some stations of work, they normally ask for people to update. But even if you have not been asked, you can make it your initiative. Just go to the bank and say, I wanted to change my next of kin. They will still allow you to make the updates. And you see how it is becoming a mental health issue. If you leave this and your family is fighting when you are gone, then it's really trouble. You have left so many people in trouble, things that you would have sorted when you are here. And the other question is, do you have the legal documents for all your property? Starting with your marriage, those who are married, is your marriage registered, or someone can just walk in and say, you never were married here, you can walk out? Could a marriage certificate be also part of the legal documents that you are getting? Do you have birth certificates of your children? Or someone else will walk in and say, no, this used to be my child. So they start disturbing you when you are dead, removing your bones and trying to do a DNA to test when this would have been done earlier. If you are buying land, you have a car, you have all the property you have, one of the ways of doing a good end of life planning, and you see what the things we are doing, we are not planning even to die tomorrow, but we are just doing them as normal life. Just getting a logbook for a car is good. It doesn't mean I'm going to die tomorrow, but it can help in case I die. Having a land title deed is good. It doesn't mean I'm dying tomorrow, but it can also help when I die. Nobody can just walk in and pick on it. Do you have an inventory of bank accounts, insurance policies, shares you have bought in different financial institutions? And when I say an inventory, these are records that you can put together. You write them down and keep them somewhere. Of course, at some point you don't give to everybody, but you can always keep them in a very secure but an accessible place. Someone used to tell me they have a briefcase. It's only them who know the pin of that briefcase. So they keep their things there. So they are saying when I die, of course, nobody will know the pin, but at least they can break. You see, that's a good plan. Then now you say, if I do these plans, people will know. Then you die, you leave so many thousands in bank accounts, and nobody knows where they are. So the money lands going to the unclaimed financial authority. And then, when it is not claimed, it becomes government money. I don't think you want to donate to the government when your family and friends and other people are there who can benefit. The other part is, do you have a list of your debtors and creditors? Some people, after they die, is when you see banks coming and saying, your father had this land as a security. It's good to make even those creditors lists so that people can know. So when you are not there, people can know, yeah, so and so owed us this, but we also owed this particular amount. Usually I'm a teacher and I enjoy talking when I hear sound on the other side. So I'll go back to my moderator so that I'm sure I'm being heard on the other end.
We are hearing you very well, Stephen. And I think, just like me, we are asking ourselves, hey, are we prepared? Are we? And especially the one for estate, that one made a lot of sense.
Mm.
It's I think I'll share it with some people, just listen, and I'll ask them, if do you have do you have debts that I need to know?
Yes.
That one really stuck from me. So in the comments, somebody has said,
Mm.
we need to be prepared so as to be prepared. So you're preparing us on how to be prepared.
Come again. I've not got it well.
Someone is saying we need to be prepared so as to be prepared. So you are here preparing us on how to prepare for death.
Yes, actually, I'm preparing you as I prepare myself. And now, for those of us who are practicing, that can be an area of counseling, of course, with awareness, and you can start sharing in church so that people know how we prepare. I think even the pastors, the imams, and those who are here and they are also leading people to God, they are preparing people for death, because they are saying, God doesn't want you to go there with a lot of sin, so make sure you repent when you are here. So it's actually a process that they are preparing people for that. So this is a conversation that I would say, let it be a conversation that will start, and starting at the family level. I don't know the last time, if there is any, that people just sat and the father or the mother said, today I just want us to talk about in case I die. And I know everybody will rebuke and say, please, that is the demonic. You don't need to talk about that. So the third area that I was looking at, a very crucial area, is personal disclosure. Personal disclosure now is, do you have any secret information that you think should be shared or should be accessed when you die? One of the areas that I was looking at is the pins, like your ATM pins, your M-Pesa pins, all the bank account pins. Can they be accessed when you are not there? Can your next of kin access those things, or they will really struggle and file an affidavit and prove they were your kins, and before they can approach it? Why are we making their life very, very difficult? The other aspect is, even of course, I'll be talking about that, your digital accounts. You have WhatsApp, you have YouTube. Nowadays, YouTube is a resource. People are earning from YouTube. So assuming you have a YouTube channel that is paying, and you are the only one who knows the password, when you die, what happens? Who will be using this? And I'm not saying, because this can be risky, of course, to pick your pins and start giving people and telling them, let's share these pins because I can die anytime. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is, can I put this pin, like the example I gave you, can I have this pin somewhere that I know, I don't want maybe my wife to know or my kids to know for now, maybe because they are irresponsible heirs, but then in case I die, can they really reach that record where it is? So at least somewhere, the way you can keep it somewhere that someone will get lost and get to it. But again, when people build trust, there are things that can actually be shared. Then the death wishes. Do you have any wishes about your death? There are people who have said, me, when I die, my hand should go to the University of Nairobi for research. Do you have any such wishes? Have you shared with the significant others? One thing that was baffling me from a few years ago is when prominent people die in this country, and then you see there was another family, like you find someone said, I only have one wife, but then on the funeral you see another wife come up, and they have grown up children, and they look like this person who is dead. So then the question is, why was this person not informing or facilitating acquaintance, that the family members should know one another? Why should they know one another in bitterness? Because as they are entering the family where you have not introduced them, the other wife who was in the family is saying, no, I don't know you. Kids are saying, look at me, even the birth certificate has your father's name. So instead of the family knowing one another in good terms, they fight, and those are mental health issues that we are talking about. So if people have what I would call secret children, is there an attempt to try to even make the child to be known even to one relative, and to of course, the most significant relatives, so that better the pain that will be at your funeral, better you say it, it comes out, people fight, then they talk and heal, then your funeral is good. Then keep it a secret, then now it comes just like a bombshell. In the funeral, people are seeing some other people that they have never known. So personal disclosure again becomes very, very important. And if you are the kind of person who will die with a lot of secrets, then possibly the death was not really well prepared for. And the final area on the 4 issues that I was talking about is your own funeral. I know the others, quite a number of us have made attempts, but the question I would ask here, how many of us have tried and have made an attempt even to do a plan for funeral, their own funeral? And when I'm talking about this is, do you know the method you prefer for disposal of your body? Would you want to be cremated? I've seen so many Kenyans now coming up to take cremation. Would you want to be buried? Would you want to be donated to a lab somewhere? If you have 10 pieces of land, where would you want to be buried? Some cultures dictate where people are supposed to be buried. But we've seen even court cases battling the burial site. People saying, no, you will not be buried there. Another one claiming, saying, it's me to bury this person. So would you want to spare those battles so that the money that would go to court would do some other development to spearhead your legacy? And is it documented? Do you have, this is very crucial, do you have some, like I would say, some decisions about the eulogy that will be read on your funeral? Someone used to tell me the most eulogies they normally lie. That's what someone was telling me, like, you know what they are talking about this person and what we know is not the same. So instead of waiting for them to lie about you, are you able to draft your own eulogy? Say, I am so and so, I was born this year. I worked with one person, who is one of my relatives, and we were actually doing a verbal eulogy. So I was like, let's work on this after preparing the person, and now he was ready to talk about his own death. So he was telling me, let me read my own eulogy. So you'd read, and say, now when I die, don't read. Nobody should read me. I want to be the one speaking on my funeral about my eulogy. So have we thought about what we want to be captured in that book? Maybe they'll edit and leave out very key things, very key achievements that you would have wanted the world to know. So today I challenge you to go and start drafting it. Start drafting a eulogy and say, yeah, this is what I would wish to be included. And you write it and say, yeah, this is what I want to be read. On the part of estate, I just forgot to mention something on the will. Have you written, because a will should be written, have you started writing how you want your things to be? And I know in this group, we also have legal professions who can help us to say, if you don't know how to do a will, this is the way it is supposed to be, what should be included. A crucial part is how much do you want your funeral to cost? And so how much are you willing to start putting in? Many times when we die, we leave that burden to others. The others, they are the ones saying, I think he needs a coffin of 20,000. And it even becomes a family battle. Another one is saying, no, we can buy 5,000, so this other money can go to something else. And the question is, why can't you decide yourself before you die and say, this is the funeral that I want to have, this is the kind of coffin I want to have, and this is some little money I'm putting somewhere as a saving. When I die, please use that to buy my coffin, so that people are not deciding. I've seen a few people in Kenya who went ahead and even dug their own graves. They said they prepared, they bought cows and bulls to be slaughtered. They made a grave, cemented inside, bought a coffin. That's someone now who has very high level of funeral planning, which I think it's the most threatening part of end of life planning. Then one last thing that I talk about funeral planning, is there an attempt to talk about family roles redistribution after death? I was experiencing something in my family when my father died some years back. It took us like 10 years after that, still people fighting on who should do what. Someone says, no, I'm the one who should do this. Another one says, no, you are the one who should do this. Like trying to reassign the roles that my father used to play. So would we want again our families to take 10 years resolving that? Or now we can work on it and say, for me, when I die, if I have these 2 kids, you and so you will be in charge of this. My wife, you'll be in charge of this. Or if you're a wife, you're saying, if I die, my husband, this should be your role. You discuss it as a family. And now this cannot be done secretly like the other parts that I've been talking about. This one, people will need to have some genuine conversations in the families. An environment should be created where discussion on death can happen without threatening, like without people feeling like they are welcoming the death that they are talking about. So those are the areas to maybe to look at. So these are conversations that should start in the families. And just about to wind up, and I was asking myself, when we did this study, of course, I showed you the areas where people are like, the fear of death was very high in the population in Nairobi, and it was a population that cuts across all ages. So I went on interviewing people and asking, what is it that you fear about death? And this would really be an area for us as psychologists, that this could be the areas to deal with in our lives and also to deal with in our clients, maybe who are having high levels of death anxiety. So forget the statistics, those are academic. Let's focus on the themes that were identified. Most people who are fearing death, when interviewed to give reasons, they would say they have life goals that they have not fulfilled. So when people are helped to focus and to continue updating themselves and fulfilling what they have set to do in life, it's one way of preparing for death. Then others were like, the process of dying is threatening. So these are people who look at death like it's a crucial thing. And this kind of traumatic, if people have watched others being killed badly, then they would come saying, I don't want to die like that. So this is something that, of course, we can deal with. Not all deaths are threatening. Some were saying they have family attachment, like they are so attached to the family, they are feeling if they die, they will be detached from the connection in the family, which is actually a positive thing. But again, they would be helped to look at individuation, where they would say, I know the family can even survive when I'm not there. The issue of unresolved family conflicts came up strongly. People saying, we have so many conflicts in the family and I don't want to die and leave them like that. So instead of pushing to prepare for death, the best way to prepare for death would be, could we be doing a constant reconciliation and addressing of issues as they approach? Others were talking of fearing hell. And those who talked about fearing hell, they are also those who felt they are not living according to their spirituality. And I already tackled the issue of spirituality in terms of death preparedness. And others are saying, the finality of death. And this was very common with the atheist community that I was interviewing, because them, they don't believe you go anywhere after this life. When you die, that is the end. So they are saying that finality, the permanency of being dead it really threatens. Then others were also reflecting on unresolved past death. They saw the way their people died badly and those deaths have not been prepared. So they also don't want to die in the same way. So allow me to skip this. These were just a few reasons for why do people accept death, and just move to the conclusion. And as I conclude, I would say one of the best ways to start is even to create awareness on what I'm calling death education. And I made a survey in the Kenyan higher learning institutions. I have not found one institution with a dedicated course on death education. They always cover it when they are teaching terminal illnesses, palliative care, but there is no specific, like a program on death education. So it's really not even an issue that is really picked up by the academicians. But we could start at our level now with this little knowledge that we are gaining today, even to start it from our families, in our schools, in our churches, and like that. And I would end by saying, planning for quality death, it improves your life. Actually, the people who are well prepared for death, their living is very fulfilling. And I was quoting one of my heroes in death studies. I'll go to the last quote by a professor from the US called Paul Wong. Paul Wong talks about meaning-making theories of death. And he's saying to be prepared for death is to be prepared for living. To die well is to live well. So what he's arguing is those people who are preparing to die, and actually when you look at all those things that we have been talking about, none of them is preparing you in the grave. There was nowhere where we are saying in the grave. All these things you are working on, you are just the way you are living. So it's more of like death preparation is equals to life preparation. And I wish at some point when we have digested this, then we can speak like St. Paul in the Bible. Paul says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. This is someone who's prepared for both sides of life. That if he lives is okay, but he's even adding and saying, if I die, it will be gain. It's like a profit. To him, he's saying, if I die is a profit. You cannot say this if you have not fulfilled your life. You have not lived your life fully. This is someone who is looking back and saying, I think I have done all that I was supposed to do. So if I live, it's okay. But at the point where I am, if I die, it is profit. So allow me to end there so that I have my moderator on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen Asasa. That was a very informative session. I am processing everything I have heard as well. And I will go straight to the comments. And today the comments are very interesting. I think this is something which is very close to, it is very sensitive or technical to be able to address. And the boldness and the courage with which you have brought it down and demystified it for us. So the comments, I'll just read through them, then you can respond later to all of them. Good evening, Daktari. True, death is discouraged in most cultures and even within the Christian world. I only know of few people who attempted to prepare for death. Martin Shikuku bought his own coffin. Thank you, Stephen, for that. Maura is asking, how do you prepare for your own death without causing a scare to your own people? Joram says it's a very relevant topic, but one requiring a lot of courage. Then someone else says here, Consuela says, very informative topic to all of us. A concern is that banks do not like to include many beneficiaries in their next of kin. Why is this? So banks do not like to include many beneficiaries in the next of kin, and why is that? Jocelyn, writing eulogy reminds me of an assignment I did in the unit on death and dying back in 2003. So Jocelyn, where she was studying, they had a unit on death and dying. How many of us had units? Psychologists, how many of us had units on death and dying? Was it a whole unit for a whole semester? Just I want to know here about that. And she says, I never forget the experience and the contents of that assignment. Lillian says, yes, I remember the late Honorable Martin Shikuku did exactly that. He dug or prepared his grave, bought a coffin, planned his funeral. And I remember people from his area really protested. Okay, Jocelyn, we're together in this. I remember we broke down in tears, almost the whole class. This formed a backbone of how I viewed death henceforth. Oh, Martha, you have come in a bit late. We start at 6 and end by 7, so we are winding up. The recording, we are live on Facebook, so you can go to Facebook and check the session there. You may not be able to prepare for death if you're not having a fulfilling life. Death and dying is a topic that makes most people uncomfortable. I taught that unit and gave an assignment to write their eulogy. It was very difficult. Oh my, okay, yes. So there we are at the moment, and I think I'll open it up for anybody who might want to be able to talk and verbalize their comments or their feedback. So welcome back to you, Stephen.
Okay, so one person, first I want to appreciate the comments. They are quite good and they tell me that people are following through the discussion and that it's stimulating some kind of thinking about the area of death. And one person has said, it is scary. How can you prepare for death? Yet it is a scaring event or experience. And that's where, when I was finishing, I was saying, again, you cannot just ambush. Today you go home and tell everybody, come on the table, we are now planning for death. It will cause more chaos. The issue is, we are saying we need to start opening conversations slowly in the family. You could even start by talking about death of someone, because that's where people are maybe comfortable to talk about. Someone who died in your family, analyze maybe the problems that arose in the family due to lack of preparation of death. Then after addressing that, you could slowly divert the discussion and now ask your family members, what about ourselves? How do we want those we leave behind to behave or to be when we have died? That can be a very tactical way of beginning to talk about it, but I want to admit it is a scaring topic. Then someone has said banks do not like to include many beneficiaries on their lists. I really don't know about that, but what I would really commend on it is at least you can get one. The worst thing is not how many beneficiaries you will be given by the bank to list. The issue is if you list wrong beneficiaries. If you had put your brother, then you have differed with him, and he's not the one who can take care of your family when you die. He will squander the money. It is more difficult than saying I have 5 kids and 1 wife, and I'm struggling who to put on. At least if I put one of these people who I know can take care of my wealth and the family wealth when I'm not there, so that I know it will help the rest, that is okay. So the worry should not even be how many should I put on my next of kin list. The worry should be, are the people that are on my next of kin list, are they the ones I want them to be there? Have I updated? That should be the reason. And I like the person commenting and saying, you cannot prepare for death if you do not have a fulfilling life. And if we want to reflect back a bit on this topic that we've been covering, the whole process of preparing for death actually has been preparing for living. Because if I identify my spirituality is affiliated to a certain religion, and I'm saying I just want to dedicate to do what this religion is saying, so that I'm always ready. In the same way, I'm preparing for my death, but I'm also living a very good life by living according to the values that I subscribe to. If I'm saying I need to plan and have all the documents of my marriage, my children's documents, my lands, all that, it may be not even I'm planning for death, but it is really good when those documents are there. They even reduce my other anxieties, because I'll not be sitting saying, what if someone steals my land? I will know legally I am the owner of this particular land. So those are the few that I thought I would need to respond to. The others were compliments, and I really appreciate everyone for complimenting and discussing this topic with me.
Thank you, Dr. Stephen Asata, for that very courageous topic you have shared with us, and even the courage to that study. It's in a very unresearched area. And I think sometimes when we have such topics, people are careful with even what to comment when they're asking. And even I'm asking us and myself, as I ask ourselves, how are we going to start this conversation? Are we going to start the conversation in our homes or families? And if so, how are we going to be able to do so? So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Anybody who wants the presentations as the same process, send 100 shillings to the number I'll put in the chat section, then you can be able to get the notes. Jane Mwangi had said she wanted to comment on something. Jane, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Helen. I wanted to comment on that aspect of banks limits the number of next of kin. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Usually there is no limit. You cannot give a limit to the number, but what happens is most people do not update their records. You find maybe the person had put as the next of kin in the original time when they were given the forms, they don't update. So mostly you find there are usually challenges if the documentations they are bringing in are missing some of the people maybe you are trying to bring forward. So it is always very important for people to ensure that the records are updated. And I'm coming from the aspect that I've worked with the bank for the longest time, and I've dealt a lot with the letters of administration we get. And then another thing you find sometimes the documents, maybe the next of kins bring or the family brings after somebody is lost, you find like two groups of people bringing in the letters of administration, and they have not gone through the right process. So you find sometimes there is back and forth on that. But when there is the documents are well authenticated and they are the correct documents, they do not actually limit, depending that you can actually prove that that was your person and maybe you are next of kin from that perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Jane. And it's always wonderful to have people who have that diverse background to be able to give the perspective and the clarification. So Jane has experience in the banking sector, hence the clarification. And I think we can wind up there. I don't know if there's any other comment or feedback. Stephen has put his information in on the screen for anybody who might want to get in touch with him. And I think also COVID has made it easier for us to be able to realize death is very near, and this is a conducive environment for us to have this discussion. I'm looking for my silver lining to that discussion on how I can bring it home. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Tomorrow we have another interesting presentation. See you tomorrow and have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.